as an attribute of law or of perhaps of custom practice, it's normally that some organisational construct comes together and are the vehicle for ensuring privacy and making sure that public benefit is accrued and making sure that research use is right. And those constructs are different, aren't they? And I think they're changing as well, aren't they? I suppose the most familiar model might well be is that construct, whether it be within government or within the health system, and occasionally, like in Wales, within a university, is a facilitator of data linkage and essentially brings data together from willing custodians, links it together and makes it available for research as a discrete set of actions. And I think there's lots of that going on. And I think that's probably the way that most data linkage has happened in the past, and probably that last step is that there's been a package of data, linked data, for that project delivered to a researcher by some means, whether that's email or secure transfer or even possibly putting it on a disk and taking to somebody else. But I think there is change. Is that a model that you recognise here in Australia?
Yes, I think it is changing. I think you're right that people did used to carry disks around and send an email with an attachment, and I'm pretty confident that that's not happening in Australia, and I'm very grateful for that. And we do have a secure file transfer system. We operate one for the users that need that. There are a number in Australia, and I think that's fundamentally important. And I think you're right as well that in the past, linked data sets would be put together and given to a particular research or research group, and that tended to happen within a jurisdiction, so that university or that research was known to the data custodians. They're reasonably comfortable with providing that data. But I think certainly when we're moving into the cross-jurisdictional field, and now a custodian in one state is providing data to a researcher across the country that they don't really know, they feel more comfortable to have that data in a secure facility where the researcher, wherever they are, can access that data. And of course, I'm sure it's the same in the UK. Certainly here, the researchers no longer come from a single university or a single state. Teams are put together from across the country and sometimes overseas as well. And so to have that data in a single secure place that can be remotely accessed safely is really important. And I think it's going to become more and more important as unauthorised access becomes more sophisticated, and we don't have to look very far to understand that that's happening around the world through social media and other places, that we need to increase our security. And it's really those secure laboratories with strong firewalls or several firewalls and other support processes are needed. And effectively, I think we should treat all data like that, or move to a situation where we can treat all data.
I think it is important. I think if I reflect back in the UK, so the thing that I run in Wales, the Sale Data Bank, started out 10, 12 years ago with a philosophy which said, and it was really to build confidence with the data suppliers with whom we work, those people that work in the health system and government. We said, if you give us your data to look after, we will tell you that it will never leave. So it will stay with us, and we will audit it, and you will be able to ask us at any point in time what's happened to that data. They should already know, but we can certainly give them reassurances about that. And that if you wish to delete it, there's only one copy, and we will delete it once, and it will be gone from everywhere. And that was very helpful in having those conversations. It gave them trust, because as over the last 10 years, and I won't name names, but there have been a catalogue of slightly embarrassing circumstances with other agencies, I'll call them agencies, in the UK, where for one reason or another, their sort of the quality of their custodianship had been questioned. And then there's been a bunch of questions asked. Well, what's happened to the data that you've shared, linked and shared? Perfectly reasonable questions, and unfortunately they were unable to say, because once they had sent data to a researcher, they really, although they may have stipulated in contract what may or may not be done with that, actually they couldn't know. And it's not impossible that in some circumstances those data might have been shared with a PhD student who then shared it with somebody else, and then sat on a file store for a while, and then someone else acted. They just couldn't answer the question, and that was embarrassing for them. So I think certainly in the UK, we now see a proliferation of approaches which say, that loss of control. And it really is about control. If you want to be trustworthy, I think you have to be able to say, well, you need to be trustworthy. I'll be trustworthy to the end, and you know I will be able to do precisely what I've done with your data. And so being trustworthy to the end means that yes, we have to build up these models where the data doesn't travel to various endpoints and then become lost to tracking. We keep it in a safe place and that people can access it. Now that has challenges, doesn't it? I mean, it requires a greater sort of technology response. That's how we work it in Wales. You know, researchers from all over the world kind of log into our systems, gain access to the data they apply for, and do their research. But we have to run the systems to support them. It's no longer the computers in their home university, wherever that might be. It's ours. So that has to be resourced, and it has to be run well. But it is easier to run it well when you've only got to run one, rather than worry whether each university who's a recipient of data are doing a good job or not. So I think we see this more and more, which is excellent. But I suppose there's a downside. So the downside is that all the data is in these kind of walled gardens, these highly secure, like mine, the Welsh one in the Sale Data Bank. It's extraordinarily difficult for us to supply data into projects and initiatives that are not executed within our walled garden. We told everybody nothing ever leaves. It has to stay here. And that's very convenient when you want to access data that's already in there. But if you want to try and do studies across other walled gardens, now suddenly we've got an en passe. You know, how do we create the opportunities for sort of greater scale studies which wants to access data from multiple walled gardens without breaching the rules that we've set up to keep data safe? So by solving one problem, we've caused another. And we see more and more of this. So I think a lot of the work and thinking that's going on is not saying, well, this kind of data safe haven type approach is wrong. It's just we haven't quite thought it through yet in terms of building facilities that allow research, beyond a single walled garden.
So to some extent, you can get around that by having the same research question asked in these different groupings of data, but it's as you say, that's a challenge. I think the strength of it is that, as you said, you can track projects so that you actually do know who's looked at this data set, when they looked at it, what they did with it, and what they pulled out. And then after they've pulled something out, there's the chance to look at it before they actually take it away and are able to publish it. And I think that's enormously important.
Yes. And I also think it gives us additional opportunities as well. So the way we enact it in Wales with the Sale Data Bank is that when a researcher accesses that they're given some component of the data and does their project, they produce artifacts. They might clean data up, or they might create algorithms or scripts which do clever things with the data, define variables better or create different variables from the data. And one of the things we encourage is that they leave those artifacts behind. So we build up a library of those kind of useful pieces of code, or sometimes it's just intelligence about the data. They might find something out about the data that nobody knew before because they puzzled over it and worried about it and they came to a conclusion. So we ask them to donate that knowledge into the data bank so that when the next searches come up, there's a library of scripts that have been used before, which they can access if they want. There's kind of information, we use a rather sort of wiki thing, so that there's information about the data, notes and observations by other researchers, and this just kind of accelerates the process. We all kind of build on each other's work rather than reinventing wheels in each time a user comes in and have to start from scratch from the original data.
Well, in Australia we have a secure remote access data laboratory. It's called SURE, Secure Unified Research Environment, but SURE is much easier to say and understand.
Right, we'll use that.
And they do have some facility there to actually store scripts that people have provided, but it's not all that systematic. I am aware that in some countries, particularly Manitoba, I think, where they've had what they call a knowledge base, and they've sort of very very systematically curated that over a number of years.
Yes.
So I think that'd be very valuable to have something similar in
So
Australia.
they are, and it's a really great example. So obviously the stuff that we've been doing for a while is really limited to Wales, but we know the Manitoba Centre and others too who are similarly doing this work, and it just strikes us that this should be perhaps an international effort, to try and sort of, at least where we do that work, try and create ways of doing it similarly. So it's potentially accessible internationally, poolable, and combinable, and also sharing the load. If we are working on data that's similar and we're doing different things, then let's share the burden so that we essentially build up a repository that could be accessible, across the communities of the world. I think it's. So that's going on. I don't know, under the IPDLN, the International Population Data Linkage Network, this work is being talked about, and people are starting to accumulate up there around this idea. And I think it's a great way forward. It's not going to be super easy because actually all of our data internationally is different, and some of this stuff is very data set specific. But even if we just did it in similar ways, structure and format kind of stuff, I think it would be a start.
And there have been some research projects done with international collaborations, but I think there's lots of opportunities for more. So things like rare diseases, where Australia's population of over 20 million is just not enough, and it needs to be pulled together with other populations around the world. So I guess I think that's something for the future, how we can better manage that sort of collaboration. I think it's enormously valuable.